Okay, so we have a sacred date with destiny coming up, and although people get nervous and frenetic that is it going to happen? Are we going to get cleaned in time and all that? The truth is, it's going to happen because it's got to happen, and there's no chance in the universe that we're not going to be ready on time. The only question is how frantic we're going to get, or how upset or nervous we're going to become by the process. That's all. So it's going to happen. And whether we do a little bit, whether we do a lot, the chametz is not such a major thing to attack. If we stay focused on the chametz, I'm not here to describe exactly how to clean for Pesach, but the truth is, this is an enormous time to be aware that there's a tremendous potential for geula, for redemption. I don't like those English words. Okay, for the Jewish people, and that we should expect the miraculous. It's Chodesh Nisan. It's a time of miracles. And although it, looks like, I guess outside also, spring is springing. The trees that look like they were dead, that look like they were gone. The Jewish people go through over the course of 6 millennium, over the course of 3 and 4 millennium, what happens in the course of a year, right? Things look like they're dead, and the spring comes, and all of a sudden, we got these yellow, I don't know what they're called, azaleas or whatever. Suddenly we got these trumpeters. They're the first ones to come out, and suddenly things that look like they were dead and asleep suddenly wake up all at the same time. It's amazing. As I look around the block, we live more in the suburbs in Muncie. I know occasionally a tree grows in Brooklyn too. But as you notice that certain trees are all blossoming at the same time, as if they were like the conductor gave a tap with his baton and said, now you yellow ones, you jump out, and now you purple ones, you jump out, and now you green ones, you start to extend your little necks out of the ground. It's all happening at the same time, so it's quite an amazing time of the year. In the physical calendar, in Malka Da'ara Malka Raki, what's happening in the heavens is happening on the earth too. But one of the things to keep in mind is, we are going through a cycle, and we are going around in a circle. We tend to look at Yetzias Mitzrayim as something, the Exodus from Egypt that happened 3,320, this year it'll be 3,325 years ago, as if we're going down some long highway of history, and we're looking way, way into the past, and it seems like it's impossibly far and distant from us, if that's how we look at it. But the truth is, when we come around the year to Pesach, we're going around in a circle, and we say, Shehechianu v'kiyimanu v'higianu lazman. Here we are. We're back here again. We're back in the same position. We're sitting crouched around the family table, or sitting with friends and close people, in the same posture, in the same position that we were, and that we have been sitting for the last 3,325 years, in the same place that we sat 3,325 years ago. The Jewish people were not in a stadium someplace, with Moshe holding sway over the crowd saying, yes, we can. Yes, we can. It was, everybody was sitting together as families, as groups, as local community members, and they were eating the Korban Pesach and waiting for the signal to go. And so also we're sitting there in a sort of a ready position, eating our matzahs and our maror, and not eating chametz, and waiting to go. So we're really going around in a circle, not to commemorate. The difference is, if you look down the highway, we're commemorating something that happened such a long time ago. It's hard to pick up. The echo will get more and more faint to us. But when we come back to revisit it, and we re-experience it, then we're going to re-experience it. We're coming back to the same place. The same ingredients that were there then are there now to be taken advantage of, and also to launch us. And therefore, when we go around in a circle, that's why every place that you go to, for traveling, as we look at through time, in time, as we're going around we're going through space, but as we're going through space, we're actually going through time. As we go around a year around the sun, we come back to the same original position. As we're traveling through time, and we're traveling through space, we understand we get into certain zones. If you happen to cross over, from one country into another in Europe, suddenly a different currency becomes valuable. I don't know, maybe Europe is a bad example because they have euro, whatever, but different currency, different language, different customs. You pat somebody in the back in China, tap them on top of the head, no, you're supposed to break a glass, you're supposed to say l'chaim. Every culture has its own, set of mores and values and things that can either get you into deep trouble or can maybe be taken as a compliment. You have to know what the language, and also when you go to France, you have to know, do we visit how can you not visit the Louvre if you go to France? How can you not go visit the Eiffel Tower? So you have to know what's important, what can be taken advantage of during this Pesach times. That's why going around in a circle, knowing we're coming back to this time and this place, makes us alert as to what the risks and what the opportunities of this time is. And therefore the Torah alerts us that what can be taken advantage of this time is, this is the language, matzah, maror, haggadah, all these different type of things. It's quite an amazing phenomenon if you think about it. The first time that matzah is mentioned in Chumash. A lot of people, I see some scholarly audience, people scratching their heads. First time matzah is mentioned in Chumash. What do you say? Anybody? What? Okay, everybody says by Abraham. It's a little bit, you skip, fast forward a little bit, just a few sound bites further after Avraham Avinu, and you find that the Malachim left the tent of Abraham and Sarah, and they had just given a bracha, Ke'ez Chaya, B'hila Saravain. Next year at this time, Sarah's going to have a child, right? It's not in Parshas Bo. It's not later on in Chumash. It's not in Sefer Shemos, but after they left, so two of the Malachim came to Sodom, and they were met by Lot, who did an extensive outreach and bringing the guests in. And then when he says in the pasuk over there that he gave them what to drink, Mishnah, he says, and he baked matzahs, right? And they ate, and they ate. So matzahs? What's he doing baking matzahs for? What happens matzahs, right? So Rashi says over there 2 words, 6 letters, 2 words. What does he say? He says Pesachaya. It was Pesach. Oh, okay, that answers it. That's why he fed them matzahs. Who knows, maybe the Mishnah that he gave them what to drink might have even been the Dalet Kosos. Rashi doesn't say that, but he's explaining the matzahs. Pesach, it was Pesach. Pesach. The Malachim just came from Avraham Avinu's tent. Let's think about this for a second. He just came from their tent, where they promised next year at this time Sarah's going to have a child. The Chazal tells us, I think it's the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, tells us that Yitzchak was born on Pesach. So, and Avraham Avinu was promised, and we mentioned in the Seder and Haggadah, that 400 years that Avraham Avinu's children will be strangers in a strange land. Part of their being strangers, Eretz Meguri Avim, part of their being strangers in a strange land was also included the time that they were in Eretz Israel, but not yet, was not the settled land. Aza, Kanani, Vaprizi, Ba'aretz, there were other people in the land, so they were a minority culture, a minority family over there. They were dissidents, whatever it was, but it was not their place. The Lot was starting up, acting as if it's theirs already. Don't behave that way. So here they were strangers in a strange land, and it turns out that the Geula was exactly 400 years from the birth of Yitzchak. Right? Even though it was 210 years in Mitzrayim. Right? So it worked out, as we say in the Pesach Haggadah, V'Hashem Chisha V'Sei Kodesh Baruch Hu Chisha V'Sei Ketz Kodesh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He accounted and He calculated the end. It came out exact. It's unbelievable. Hakol B'Seder. Everything is okay. It's crazy that's exactly what happened. So here they were sitting over by Lot, in exactly a year before the birth of Yitzchak, right? On Pesach. And that means it was 401 years before the actual Geula of Mitzrayim. And what was Lot doing? He was serving matzahs. Isn't that an incredible thing, right? Question is, what is he serving matzahs for? When we sit down at the Pesach Seder and we get finally to we get through the Magid section, and finally we get to matzah, where we're showing and displaying the, Rabbi Gamliel says anybody doesn't speak about these 3 things, lo yatzedei chabasa, didn't fulfill his obligation. Matzah, Maror, Pesach, right? So we hold up the matzah and we say, matzah al shumah, why are we eating the matzah? Right? Why are we eating the matzah? Anybody remember? Why are we eating the matzah? Because not enough time. We're living in Egypt, and it baked on people's back, and and that's the account that accounts for the matzah that we're eating on Pesach. So why are we eating matzah? We're eating matzah because when Klal Yisrael left Mitzrayim, they didn't have a chance for it to bake. And yet Lot was serving matzahs 401 years to the day, right before then. So the question is, what's the relevance of matzahs 401 years before there was ever such a thing called Yetzias Mitzrayim, the Exodus from Egypt? It contradicts exactly what we say at the Pesach Seder. You understand what I'm saying? What's Lot doing? Don't let me leave this room until I give you the answer. Okay? I got an answer for you. I'm not going to go for it right now. But okay, just something. Right after Avram in Sodom.
Also, she made it for she made. It says Sarah Torah when who came to tell us about love?
I don't know. I'm talking Pshuto Shel Mikra. I'm talking about the Psukim. Okay, so we take a look. Pesach has a strange phenomenon, even for the secular Jewish community. I mean, again, I'm not a big proponent of statistics. Statistics only describe behavior ex post facto, right? But they don't proscribe behavior. We all have bechira. We all have free will. Okay. But of the 5.5, approximately, I saw a statistic someplace from that of the 5.5 million Jews in America, and that's what the number has been for the last 60 years, even though the population of the country has grown by 60 and 70%. Like it was, when it was 200, 180 million, now it's, more than 300 million people, but still we're 5.5, and we're still not a minority. Isn't that an unbelievable thing? You got other cultures that are in the 60s and 70%, and they're minorities. No matter what, they become the majority, and they're still minorities. It's amazing. Jews are not minorities, But of the 5.5 million Jews in America, 3.5 have no synagogue affiliation at all. They don't belong to Reform, they don't belong to Conservative, and the Orthodox, nothing. 3.5, that's more than 60% have no synagogue affiliation. The queer phenomena is that something like 75% are keeping some form of Pesach and some form of Hanukkah. Wow, it's just a phenomenal number. The question is, how is that possible? Why is that, right? Now, some sociologist is going to tell you, someone's going to give a wild guess. Oh, Hanukkah, we understand, they're shining a light, and we have to have our response. They're putting up those, the shiny bushes and the trees and everything with all the light shining in your face everywhere you go, blinding us. So we got a little response, a little candle in the window, twinkle, twinkle, and they go, we got our twinkle. So we have to say something. We can't let it go unanswered. Yeah, fine. That's for the good for the public school kid. So we sing Dreidel, 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 and they're singing Handel's Messiah, whatever it is. So now what do we do about doesn't explain Pesach, right? I don't think the Easter Bunny is so compelling. Even if you happen to go into CVS these days and you see those little pink and purple colors or whatever it is, it's so compelling that Grandma is going to turn the whole house upside down and bring these dishes in, and everyone who was in university, everybody who was in different parts of the world, all has to gather together for Pesach. Why is everybody coming home for Pesach? What's so compelling? It's in the middle of the Final Four. We're in the middle of basketball season is coming to a certain, college basketball is coming to a certain climax, and it's tax season, and there's a lot of pressure, and yet everyone's going to come running, to gather together to open up their Maxwell House Haggadah, good to the last one drops, And we're going to make a Pesach Seder. What? The family never gets together, not even for Thanksgiving, not unless it's a funeral, not unless it's maybe a bar mitzvah, but not everybody shows up, So here the whole family comes, and they cram into a room and they sit there and they're reading Torah together. They're reading this book, going back to Mitchila of the Avodah Zarah, Hayu Avoseinu, Manish Tana Halayla Zeh, going through all the formalities, and they're eating the matzah. Maybe some people leave a little bit early, but everybody's there. Why? Why does such a thing like that happen? 75% are keeping it, and yet 3.5 don't belong to 3.5 of the 5.5 million, more than 60% don't belong to any synagogue affiliation. What's going on over here? So I think the answer can be found in the magic of a certain number that is very prominent on Pesach night. What number stands out on Pesach night? What do you say? Number 4, right? We have the 4 questions, and we have the 4 sons, and we have the 4 cups of wine, and we have 4 basic mitzvahs that are expressed on Pesach night. Okay, so 4 seems to be the number. So what's the significance of 4? Why is 4 such a prominent number? So we got to stay around to the end of the Pesach Seder to catch the meaning of the number 4. Because anybody's around to the very end, right? There's a couple of other good questions that come at the end also. Echad mi yodea, who knows one? I would like to say that the whole Pesach Seder is summarized in that question, who knows one? And we should be able to say at the Pesach Seder, answer the question, I know one. Echad ani yodea. Echad mi yodea, echad ani yodea. I know one. That's the question that we want to be able to really answer at the end of the Pesach Seder. But if we jump a couple of verses ahead, it says, Arba'a ani yodea, Arba'a ani yodea. Arba imahos. 4 are the mothers, right? 4 are the mothers, the mamas, right? So 4 tells you something, has something to do with the mommies, right? And if we hearken to a pasuk, a beautiful pasuk in Mishlei that says, Shema b'ni musar avicha v'al titosh Torah samecha. I once heard it explained from one of my Rebbeim like this. It says, Shema b'ni musar avicha. Listen to the musar of your father, v'al titosh Torah samecha. In order to reach the level of what your father expects from you, which is, a high, expectation, that high expectation, you have to employ active listening. Shema b'ni musar avicha. I want you to listen. You have to get it. You have to understand it. You have to understand what I'm trying to tell you. Shema b'ni. Listening is not a passive thing. It's an active thing. Active listening. V'al titosh Torah samecha. But don't abandon the Torah of your mother. That means in order to be attached to the Torah of your mother, don't break it. Don't abandon it. Don't do anything to sever it. So someone who's automatically born from a Jewish mother, someone who's born into a Jewish setting, is automatically Jewish. So how come we don't need the contrivance of belonging to a synagogue in order to hear about Pesach or Hanukkah? Because these are Yom Tovim that belong in the home. Pesach, Hanukkah is Mitzvahs Hanukkah ner Ishu Beso. When Klal Yisrael came down to Egypt, it was Eilu Shmos Bnei Yisrael Haboyim Mitzrayim Eis Yaakov Ish Ubeso. It was an Ishu Beso, each one in his household type of mitzvah. And the same thing. We sit around the Pesach Seder, it's a household mitzvah. It's something that you hear from your mother. When I was in university or far away, and my mother tells me it's Pesach time, when are you coming home? And I told him, I think I'm going to stay here. They're having a Pesach Seder over here. She says, when are you coming home? I said, I'm going to have a Seder. When are you coming home? Like home. You want me to take my head out of the oven, don't you? Okay, I'll be there. It was through the force and the compulsion of a mother who was pushing, saying, this is where I want my children here. I want my family here. This is where it's happening. Pesach is home. That's where it's happening. I'm saying a hotel, I think, is B'diavad. Home. That's where it's happening. Pesach is a family orientation. Is a home thing. Therefore, it makes sense that you have so many people keep, because it expresses not maximal Judaism. Actually, Pesach, in a certain way, is expressing minimal attachment to Judaism. We're showing that we're alive, that we're still connected. Hanukkah also shows that we're still alive. There's a flame that's flickering over here. There's still a pilot light. And on Hanukkah also, Pesach also, we're showing that we're attached. That somehow Jewish people are attached, and there's a chance to get even more attached on Pesach night. That's the opportunity of the evening. And therefore, in order to make sure that everyone is attached, we have a very sacred obligation on Pesach night. And the sacred obligation devolves around one of the important mitzvahs of the evening, the mitzvah of Magid, right? Which is really based upon the pasuk that says, "V'higarta levincha b'yom hahu." You should tell it over to your child. You tell it over to your child on the night. He says, it doesn't say children. It says tell it over to your child, right? Right? That's why when we introduce the Daled Bonim, the 4 children, it says, Neged Arba Bonim Dibra Torah. The Torah speaks about 4 children. Echad Chacham, ve'echad Rasha, ve'echad Tam, ve'echad she'ena dei lishol. One wise, one wicked, one simple, and one who does not know the answer. How come it says one? Okay, it said Tam. And the truth is, because each one have to look at it as if that's the only one. Someone once came, I think, to the Lamja Yeshiva, and they asked the Rebbe, said, "I'm looking for someone for my daughter. How about that bacher over there? That looks like a nice fellow, the one he's learning nicely." And he goes, "Oh, that's my Ben Yachid. That's my only son." He goes, "Oh, that's the Rebbe's son." How about that fellow over there? He says, "Oh, that's my Ben Yachid. That's my only son." How can he be your Ben Yachid? You're also your Ben Yachid. He goes, "Each one is my Ben Yachid. Each one is my only son." On Pesach night, there's no such thing as like general education in public school or yeshiva. Whatever, it's like tube socks, one size fits all. You're teaching to the middle of the class, and 2.5 standard deviations to the right, and 2.5 standard deviations. Well, I'm sorry if you don't get it. Tough, go look it up, or go do some extra work, or get a tutor or something like that. On Pesach night, I got to make sure that everybody's included. Echad Chacham, ve'echad, whether it's a Chacham, or whether it's a Rasha, or whether it's a Tam, or whether it's a She'ena Dei Lishol. I got to make sure that everybody feels included on Pesach night. It's a very, very critical night. I once heard such an explanation like this. There's another reason why it's Echad Chacham, ve'echad Rasha, ve'echad Tam, ve'echad She'ena Dei Lishol, because the truth is, it could all be one person also that has all those 4 different attitudes competing within the same personality. It's all echad, right? So, and the explanation is, how come there's 4 different, how come it's that Seder of Chacham and Russia. Chacham in Russia doesn't seem like, it's like saying, he's tall. So no, but this one is fast. It just seems like they're facts that don't have anything to do with each other. If it's Chacham, then one is tipesh. One is wise, then one is foolish. Or if one is Russia, then the other one should be a tzaddik. What's Chacham and what's Russia? How come they go together like that? One of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbes had said, like there's 4 generations that come to the United States, let's say, for example, or come into, let's say, the Zaydi comes over and he has, he's dressed like a Jew and he talks like a Jew and he has his svarim and he knows, and he settles into the Lower East Side and he calls out to his son, right before Shabbos, where is he? Yeah, he's out in the street, Youngie, and he comes up because he says, it's Jack, Dad. He's embarrassed in front of his Italian friends. And every time his father comes to speak to him, he wish he could lose that accent. He wish he could, change his identity, change his nose, changes, his last name. So he changes it from, Yankabov to Yankov. He changes it to Jacobs or whatever it is. He sanitizes it. I know one family member turned it from Weintraub to Winthrop. Winthrop. And you got little nose jobs, and then they had children with, with a nose like a macaw, they're because we're the Rheintraub, man, we're the Rheintraub. You can change your noses, but you can't change your Moses, that's it, we're Jews. So this kid goes on to Columbia University, and he gets himself a couple of high degrees, and he moves out to Scarsdale, whatever it is, in the suburbs, and he comes to grandfather once a year with his children. They cram into the little apartment over there with a few little icons around and and his grandfather saying the whole Seder in Yiddish, and for some reason the father is, the son is grishing inside, and the grandson is wondering, how come my father has such antipathy for my grandfather, such a sweet, nice man, and he tells nice stories, and he always gives me a hug, and he seems to have wisdom, but I don't know where he got his wisdom from, because he doesn't have the certificates and the plaques on the wall like my father does, but he seems to have wisdom from someplace. Where did he get it? He worked hard with his hands, and he had to struggle to survive, and yet he seems to have more a twinkle in his eye and wisdom. And I don't know, why they're struggling, why they have this tension between them. This young fella grows up and he has a child, and his son, now has Rastafari hair and dyed pink, and is riding on a skateboard, and with his ears plugged in with whatever, with rap music, and he has no connection, to anything at all. There only goes 4 sons, because after that he's either not going to carry on, he's not going to have a child, or his child is he going to intermarry. He's gone. You can't get further and more diluted and disconnected to that. So it's a de-evolution from process, and therefore it goes from Chacham and it goes to Russia. Why Chacham in Russia? They say in Eretz Yisrael there was somebody who was out yelling Shabbos, Shabbos, as cars were driving by in Shabbos. I'm not saying that's educationally the right thing to do. This car comes to a screeching halt, and this guy jumps out and he reaches under his seat and he pulls out a tire iron, and he moves over to the rabbi. He says, make your last wish, because you're about to meet your maker. And the rabbi says, hey, wait a second, what did I do wrong? He says, you're out here yelling Shabbos, it's none of your business. He says, no, that's not why you stopped your car, he tells this fella. The guy says, you tell me why I stopped my car? I stopped my car because you're out here yelling Shabbos, He says, no, that's not why you stopped your car. He says, you telling me, that's why I stopped my car, because you're out here yelling Shabbos. He says, no, that's not why you stopped your car, and I'll prove it to you. The guy says, oh, you're going to prove it to me? Why? I know why I stopped the car. So the rabbi says to him, he says, if I was out here on Tuesday yelling, Yom Shlishi, Yom Shlishi, he says, would you have stopped your car? He says, no. He says, of course not. You would say, I'm crazy. The guy's crazy. He's out here yelling Tuesday, Tuesday. He says, but when I shouted Shabbos, he says, something inside of you shouted Shabbos. He says, and that's why you stopped your car. Because the Russia, why is it Chacham the Russia? Because you have somebody you have people there's 2 types of people who know what it is. The one person who knows about Yiddishkeit, knows Torah, knows mitzvahs, knows halacha, and he wants to know more. And he's thirsty to know more. He has an appetite for it. Sometimes somebody knows, and they haven't been complying, they haven't been doing it, and they feel their conscience is bothering them. And therefore they can't remain at peace with themselves without, giving a kick, and without trying to destroy Yiddishkeit and tear it down. Therefore they corrupt from being a Chacham to being a Russia, because either we're growing, or we're disassembling, and therefore it goes from Chacham and it goes to Russia. So that's why you have in Eretz Yisrael, for example, you have people who are, let's say, you have people who are for Yiddishkeit, you have people who are against Yiddishkeit. You have against Yiddishkeit? Never saw such thing. Because the people who are against Yiddishkeit know what it is. They grew up, their fathers, they have they wish they could bury that picture of the grandfather with the beard and who's on the wall, who's staring at them, when they go home to their parents' house, and therefore they're fighting against that picture. They're fighting against their own conscience. They're fighting against the Kol Mamadaka. Whenever they hear see somebody on keeping Shabbos, it bothers them because something inside of them is shouting Shabbos. So they can't be at ease with it. People who know, and there's people against it. Then you got the Russian who comes over to Eretz Israel, and he sees this one fighting, this one, he sees the fight. He goes, "What is it, Rabbi? I don't know. How come he's so passionate for? He's so passionate against. I don't get it, Rabbi. What's going on in here? I don't know what exactly the fight is." And then you have the American exile. Then you get the American who sits over there and says, "Kulanu misubin." We're all reclined. We're all asleep. It doesn't matter. It's not on my. It's not on my. Whatever. It's not part of my iPhone. Not part of my. Pardon me. I don't even know. It's not on my Facebook. I don't know what you're talking about. It's not one of my channels. It's not like whatever these things are. I have no idea. But people just have so many other options that it just became irrelevant. It's hard to penetrate into people's brains. We're totally anesthetized over here, to a large extent. That means there is still a heartbeat, but it's very, very hard to penetrate into the mind. And the truth is, we sit at the Pesach Seder, and the reason why we present the four sons is after we've asked the four questions, which is really one question asked in with two different two different themes and two different motifs, right? One is, the question of the night is, is there something going on in this night? Is there something special about this night? What's different about this night than all other nights? And then one way of presenting it is, we have two questions that start off, matzah and maror. Ooh, matzah and maror. Matzah, we just presented halach ma'anya. This is poor man's bread, poverty. Oh, and this is in maror. Oh, I don't have to tell you about maror, bitter slavery. So it's poor slaves. Oh, bitter slavery, poor slaves. Well, we're poor slaves. This is like Tisha B'av night. Oh, I get it's one of those sad Jewish holidays. We're going to sit on the floor and cry and tell about all the bad things that happened. Holocaust. This is what's going on here tonight. It's a sad, sad night. But yet the whole place is splashed up with silver and fine dishes and silverware. Whoa. But on the other hand, we switch to the other direction and we see that there's leaning and there's dipping going on. Leaning and dipping. Leaning is not something you do in front of your parole officer or when you're going on to meet your future father-in-law, mother-in-law either. You don't suddenly put your feet up on and recline. You sit there straight up back and you try to behave. You don't want to show like you're too comfortable in this particular position. So you should. But we're reclining and we're dipping. Dipping is something that rich people do. Oh, are we poor slaves or are we rich free people? And the answer is, Avadim Hayinu, we were slaves. Leparo Mitzrayim, Ve'Hashem Elokeinu Hotziyanu Misham Biyad Chazaka B'Zroin Netuya. Now that we have the answer, that really it's a night that changes scenery from going from slavery to freedom, and we're going to go dip into the past, into the slavery, in order to re-experience and to regain the freedom back. Oh, so that's what the night's about. Now, that's really a blink test. A blink test. You know what a blink test is? A friend of mine told me that his father, during the the Depression, right, was an optometrist, and when people would come to him for glasses, so he'd put the glasses onto the person, and he would say, "Okay, that'll be $1, please." Okay, that was money back then, and if they didn't flinch, they didn't blink, he'd say, "For the frames." And that'll be another $1 for the lenses themselves. And if they didn't, flinch after that, he said, and that'll be another $1 for the examination. And if they, and for the craftsmanship or the labor, he said that'll be another $1, be $4 altogether. But if they protested $1, who's got $1? For the frames, I didn't realize it was going to cost that. Because then I'll give it to you for 75 cents. Don't worry. Then here, let me just polish them. So he wanted to see if there's a reaction. So we say we were slaves in Egypt, and Hashem, the Almighty King of the universe, reached down through history and into creation of the earth and changed history and changed the river of history for us, for the Jewish people. This is what Hashem did for us. Does anybody have any reactions over here? Now, if I would step into a cafeteria, a university cafeteria, and I would and I would put my hand into my stand up on the table and give a clap and give a bang until everybody gets quiet. I said, I have an announcement to make. So what is it? Ich bin Napoleon. I am Napoleon. And I would stick my hand into. Everybody go like, whoa, guys, did he just say he was Napoleon? So some people there'll going to be only 4 possible reactions. Only 4 possible reactions. Some people are going to come running to me in my direction with their notepads, and they can say, please, I'm writing a paper on French history. Can I use you as a primary source? Marie Antoinette, did she really say, let them eat cupcakes? Or what did she say, let them eat cakes? Oh, they got it all wrong. She said pancakes, and she said French toast. I think get changed along the way. They're going to be, and the head, did her head really roll from the guillotine? Oh, what did they do? The rest of her, I don't want to tell you what. Oh my gosh, OMG, So, oh wow, you can use me as a primary source. I'll have people interviewing me. You have other people that are running to the door, like hustling out the exit, or cramming out the exit door. Perhaps more people running in that direction. If the guy said he's Napoleon, then he thinks he's a nutcase, And then next thing you know, he thinks he's going to say he's Saddam Hussein. He's going to say he's something else. He's going to say, get this guy out of here, get me out of here before he changes his personality into something else. He's a nut, And there's going to be somebody else who says, what do you say, Tom? Okay, Tom. He says, how come he said, how come people are running to him and how come people are running away from him? I see people running in both directions. How come they're running in both directions? He says, isn't Napoleon like one of those flaky cakes with like creamy layers in between? Isn't that, So the guy says he's a cake. He says he's a piece of pastry, So what are people running to him? What are they getting so excited for? Were they running away from him? I don't get it, What is it, Rabbi? I don't get it. Well, what's this, why are people so nervous? And so, the guy wants to say he's pastry, so he's a fruitcake, he's a pastry. So what, And he said, so what do you say, Phil? And then some guy sitting there, he said, I don't know. My girlfriend hasn't texted me back in the last couple of days, and and I'm wondering where she is. Someone said they saw her with some of the guy in the football team, and like, oh man, this is like, oh God, I don't know what to do. Maybe I'm gonna. I got my own problems. Let him be who he wants to be. I don't know. Who did he say he was? Nappy only? I don't know. That's it. Let him take a nap if he wants to. I got my own thing going on here. I got my own self-esteem issues. So that's what's going on here. There's only 4 possible reactions. There's people who know and they have a strong reaction for. There's people who know and they have a strong reaction and repulsion against. And there's some people who don't know, but they'd be interested in knowing. And then there'd be those who don't know and don't confuse me with the facts. I got my mind made up already. I don't want to do anything that might obligate me. I don't want to gain any more information. And really, those are the 4 possible attitudes. We can line them up with the 4 sons also. With the 4 questions, I'm sorry. And what are the 4 questions? The first of the 4 questions has to do with Pesach night, has to do with matzah, right? Although we introduced matzah is halach manya, is poor man's bread, but it's no mistake that the word mitzvahs and matzahs is really the same letters, right? Isn't it interesting? Mitzvahs and matzahs, the same thing. It's interesting. We're going to clean up. We're going to be so frenetic to get rid of all kinds of chametz, right? If you take the same letters of chametz and you spell out the word matzah, there's 2 letters that are exactly the same, not mem and sadi, right? 2 same letters. And the only difference between the hey and the ches that makes the difference between chametz and matzah is the difference between an open mouth and a closed, and a guttural, right? and a breathing hay, It's just that little bit of that little choking over there, just that little bit. Because the difference between chametz and matzah is 18 minutes. A second after 18 minutes, it already becomes chametz. Okay, thank you very much. After 18 minutes, it becomes chametz. It's a difference in seconds. And it's made out of the same stuff. It's chametz is so poisonous, so why are we even engaging matzah at all on Pesach at night? And the answer is, that's part of the lesson of matzah, is that matzah is really disciplined chametz. And what is chametz? Chametz is undisciplined matzah. That's what it is. We're not running away from the Yetzer Hara. We're engaging it, and we're going to try to make proper use out of it and discipline out of it. And therefore, no mistake that mitzvahs and matzahs are really the same. The Gemara Chazal tell us, guard the matzahs, right? And they say, don't read guard the matzahs. It says, guard the al tikra matzahs ela mitzvahs. Guard the mitzvahs. Mitzvah haba b'yadcha al tach mitzenu. Mitzvah that comes to your hand, don't let it become chametz. Grab onto it. Chacham leib yikach mitzvah. Wise person will grab onto mitzvahs. And therefore there's a connection over here. And it could be that the intonation, depending upon how a person asks the question on Pesach night, that's the type of answer that they're going to get. That's why the question is so important. One great philosopher once said the following thing: there's nothing more irrelevant than the answer to a question that was never asked. That's how we go through this whole rigmarole to ask a question. We do a little switch in order to prompt a question. We wash, we make kiddush, and we wash just like every other Friday night, and then and we hit a note, and we said, okay, instead of lifting up a fluffy loaf or even a matzah and making hamotzi lechem in arts would go nicely into our ears like we do every other week of the year, suddenly we pick up a piece of potato or whatever, and we say, Bari Priyadam, there's a karpas, karpas, oh my gosh, what was that, And when do we get to the food? Well, no. We gotta sit and find it. Now that prompts the question. Even to our own psyche, our own Pavlovian juices are already responding like, wow, this is different. This feels different. This is something happening over here. Manish tana halayla zeh. What's going on over here? Depending upon how we ask that question, it makes the whole difference in what type of experience we have on Pesach. The whole difference is made in that question. And therefore the Chacham can ask the question in the following way. Focusing on matzahs. The first question, lining up with the first of the four sons, the first of the four attitudes. The wise one is wise and wants to know more. Manish tana halayla hazeh mikol halelos. What can we learn different tonight? What can we change? How can we adapt ourselves? Nishtana means to change. Nishtana means to learn. How can we change? When you're changing, you're learning. When you're learning, you're changing. How can we grow? What can we do differently tonight? Which mitzvah can we focus on from Mikol Halilos, from all the other nights? Woe to the general who fights the last war. What is peculiar about this night? What do we have? What's the battle that we're fighting in this exile that will fortify us? What mitzvahs, what discipline do we grab onto that will allow our family, our culture, our system to survive? What can we do? What can we do this night, this exile? People are not chasing us with bayonets into open pits, and we're not running from Nazis, let's say. But what are we running from? What is putting us at risk over here? And which mitzvah, what discipline can we accept upon ourselves? Manish tana halayla zeh mikol halelos. What from all the other nights, or what can we learn from all the other nights that we can apply ourselves, that we can make sure that we're going to be a part of destiny, not just a part of history. We don't want to be left in history, right? There's the 20-80 rule, right? It says that 80% of the Jews were left in Mitzrayim, and Rabbi Miller says they were lost in the plague of darkness. And Rabbi Miller Zatzal said, he says 80% are lost in the darkness of every generation. We don't want to be a statistic, and I want my kids to be a statistic. We have to make sure that we're part of what's moving forward. It could be that more will make it out ultimately in the final goal. We hope that everybody will make it out. Be'ez Hashem. We'll see that 75% are keeping. Therefore, we have to see if we can go. Manish tana halayla zeh. What can we learn? What can we grow? Halayla zeh. This night, this exile. What do we do? How do we stay alive? How do we fortify ourselves? That's the way the wise son can ask the question. The person asks like that will come away. We'll have a different type of meeting. We'll find out. From the Pesach Seder, was it like Lavan who went it was the exile of assimilation, or was it the exile of annihilation like Paro? Which one are we involved with over here? We'll try to identify from the Pesach Haggadah, from the story that's told over there, at which stage of which exile are we involved with right now? Okay, so now we get to the next son. And the Rasha asks, Manish tana halayla zeh mikol halelos. It's not even a question. Ma ha'avodah zos lachem. Lachem. What are you people? You ever hear someone say, you people, right? And it's all avoda. He's focused on the work, he's focused on the price, but not on the merchandise. There's so much effort that goes into it, but what you get out of it, he's not quite aware of. So the advice that's given at the Pesach Seder is v'haki ashinaf, to hit him into the teeth. Okay, and I know that the Haggadah, I never saw any place that is promoting any place, corporal punishment or violence should take place, or fisticuffs. People should start duking it out at the Pesach Seder. But it says haki ashinaf. Why say hit him in the teeth, blunt him in his teeth? I have my own parish on that. The teeth look like they're tough on the outside, right? Tough enamel, person shows their teeth, But anybody who's ever been to the dentist, all you have to do is hear the sound of the dentist drill, and all of a sudden we all start to squirm in the chair. That little sound is enough to make us all weak inside, because just a millimeter deep underneath that tough enamel surface is a very, very sensitive nerve. And what is that sensitive nerve? So when we answer back the medicine that the Russia gives, he says the hak yashinav, you hit him in his teeth, and you say to him, this is what Hashem did for me. Leave low. You don't even talk to him directly. He says, Hashem did this for me and not him. You talk to everybody else as if he's not there, because he took himself out of the klal. If he would have been there, he wouldn't have been redeemed. Listen what the Sfas Emes says. This was when we say Bavor Zeh Asa Hashem Li. This is unbelievable. When the Sfas Emes says, when it says Bavor Zeh Asa Hashem Li, this is what Hashem did for me. When I went out of Mitzrayim, it says it doesn't mean that Hashem happened to take Klal Yisrael out of Mitzrayim 3,325 years ago, and then 3,325 years later, we're here still commemorating and doing the same things that they were doing back there, because that's what happened back then. It says, Bavor Zeh Asa Hashem Li, this is what Hashem did for me. Rashi says, Shakayim mitzvasav, that I'm going to fulfill His mitzvahs. That means that we're sitting over here in Brooklyn and in Monsey or in Yerushalayim, wherever we happen to be, and that when we're sitting and making our Seder and eating the matzahs and not eating chametz, and we're drinking the Dalet Kosas and we're doing our thing, we're doing the mitzvahs on Pesach night, and we're doing Magid on Pesach night, we're explaining, and we're asking Manish Tana, and we're doing Magid on Pesach night, we're fulfilling the mitzvahs. So Kodesh Baruch Hu had us in mind 3,325 years ago that there's going to be people in the future, right? Who Yishalcha bin Machar, when your child is going to ask you into the future, Yesh Machar Shalachar Zman, this is Machar into the future. So Kodesh Baruch Hu has the people into the future who are going to be fulfilling the mitzvahs. Those are the ones that Kodesh Baruch Hu has in mind way back then, from that time. It wasn't just a happenstance, like the farmer who puts the seed into the ground to create an orange tree, and he has in mind that in 50 years and 100 years, I'm going to be picking fruit. I had this fruit 100 years later in mind that I'm going to be picking it. Like the farmer also put it into the ground and then knew that 70 years later, even it was going to be past his lifetime, that he was going to be picking carobs from that tree, like the story with Honi Amago we had discussed once before. So Kodesh Baruch Hu Chishev as a Kate saw what's going to come at the very end. So listen what the Sfas Emes says. So the Rosh sits and he takes himself out of the klal. He takes himself out. He's not just taking himself out now. He's taking himself out from back to the future. He's taking himself out from a Kodesh Baruch Hu didn't have you in mind. Didn't have him in mind. That means he's not a part Kodesh Baruch Hu. He wasn't what a Kodesh Baruch Hu had in mind 3,325 years ago. He was not included back then. Since he's not included back then, he's not included right now. Paul says, what do you mean I'm not included? I'm not even, I'm a non-factor in Jewish history and in Jewish destiny? Oh, suddenly you get to that sensitive nerve. I want to be a part of it also. Suddenly me, Yehudi, comes up and says, I want my kids to be a part, accepted in Israel. Oh, you want to be a part of it? Okay. So be a productive part of it. Be part of the solution. Don't be part of the problem. Don't come here and try to, we used to have this one fellow came to our Pesach Seder. He used to, at certain places he gets so unnerved by the whole thing, so impatient, he would start to sit there and read the New York Times, and you could hear him turn the pages. Nobody could hear anybody talking. It was just the sound of the pages of his New York Times turning, Uncle Herb. We called him the bitter Herb, what do we need? You people, So you people, you want to take yourself out? Anybody who separates themselves from the klal, is not a part of it. We want to be. Rabbi Miller says, he says, when it says in the Mishnah that crowns the Mishnah of every Mishnah, Perkei Avos, every parak in Perkei Avos, it's really a Mishnah that said, Kol Yisrael yesh lam chelik le'olam haba. Every Jew has a portion next world. He says it's only a part of if he's a part of Kol Yisrael, he's a part of all Israel. We want to be part of the Jewish people. And now we get to the third son who sees dipping. He sees this way and that way. I see people running to it. I see people running away from it. Ad matai tem poshkin al sefer. Maybe I'll have it this way, a little bit this way, a little bit that way. No, you can't have it both ways. What are you going to be? Are you going to go for it? Is it right? So he can ask simply, mazos. What is it? What is it? No specifics. Mazos. Doesn't say ilachem. What is it? What is it? I want to know what it is. Oh, you want to know what it is? Manishtana halayla zemi kol alelos. Whereas the previous is, what are going to change tonight from all the other nights? What are going to change from all the other nights? We sat here before. Did it get us out? It's all dark history. It's all pain. It's all suffering. It's been a suffering and pain. It's like a fly sitting on a Rembrandt. All he sees is the black lines. He doesn't see, he doesn't see the full spectrum. He doesn't see the whole picture. He doesn't see all the lines. He doesn't see how everything adds up. So he focuses on what's wrong and what's bad with this, what's wrong with the scene. But now we have the simple son. He comes and he can ask very, very nicely. He doesn't know, but he wants to know. He can look at it with innocent eyes and says, Manishtana halayla zemikolos. Is there something different about this night? That the whole family is sitting together, and not just our family, but 75% of Jews, even though we said before that of the 5.5 million Jews in America, 3.5 have no synagogue affiliation. It's more than 60%, and yet 75% are sitting around a Pesach Seder, and they all took out their Maxwell House of Haggadahs, we mentioned before, good to the last one drops, and they look back to the beginning of, as if some grand conductor had given a tap on his shnender with his baton, and everybody on the same night. Not like other American holidays where they moved it to the third Thursday in November, or the first Monday, in this month, and you don't even know what the original date was. It always come back in the Jewish calendar. It always come back to this night. And even though I can't remember what I ate for breakfast yesterday, unless some people ate the same thing for breakfast, what did you eat? You remember what you ate for breakfast yesterday? It's very hard to remember, right? Remember the Pesach Seder last year? I remember the Pesach Seder last year, And not only remember, but even if I didn't remember, I know what we were eating on Pesach. What were we eating on Pesach last year? We were eating matzah. What weren't we eating? We weren't eating pizza. We weren't eating bagels, right? And if I ask you, what were your great-grandparents eating on Pesach night 150 years ago? What were they eating? They were eating matzah. I can guarantee it. What weren't they eating? They weren't eating chametz. That's for sure, right? And it would say 1,000 years ago in Northern Africa or in Spain or in Eastern Europe, what were they eating? What were they eating? They were eating matzah on this night. One of the previous, I heard in Pikachu, I heard from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He said like this. He says one of the proofs of neshama is that the further a person gets away from an event, of something which is physical, the more it gets cycled out of our experience. What I ate for breakfast yesterday? Yesterday, what was yesterday? I can't remember, right? He said, but the proof of neshama is the further you get away from he was on a yurt site from somebody that you felt close to, a human being, a neshama. He says the more they become clear to you who that person was, what they stood for, the more you get you get away from the eyes and the nose and the specifics of, what their, the body type and all that stuff. You get more into who was that person. It becomes more clear to you, more crystallized who that person was. Pesach we're getting further away from Yetzias Mitzrayim, but it can become much more clear to us. The echo and the actual sound of Yetzias Mitzrayim is still even more available to us than it was when the original event happened. And therefore, we're sitting over here, and we are the Jewish people. Who are the 14 million Jewish people that are alive today, right? You think, oh, that's the Jewish people. That's not all the Jewish people. It's like the little heads on the top of a bush. Let's say nowadays, the world is spelling this out, with perfect clarity. You see the top of a hedge, and all of a sudden you got these new little buds that are just reaching out from the top, of a tree. So let's say you have a tree that's sitting there like a crew cut. Who are the Jewish people? Those are the 14 million little edges. We're the edge. And on Pesach night, we look back and we realize, each branch traces itself to another branch going back thousands and thousands of years until we get back to the beginning. We start mitchila of the avodah zarah hayavosein. We predate Avram Avinu. And we said Avram Avinu took a bold step forward onto the stage of history. He recognized the Kadosh Baruch Hu. He went against the world. He had a Yitzchak had a Yaakov. But each one had somebody that took a left or right turn off of the stage of history, and that created a seed that went into the ground, and 70 became 600,000. The roots went down to Egypt, and suddenly 600,000 people came out of Mitzrayim, right? And suddenly it was the birth of a nation. So, and why did it all happen? How did it all happen? So we say at the Pesach Seder, he says, because of Kadosh Baruch Hu Chishev Esaketz. It was a promise that was given to Avram Avinu that worked out exactly 400 years to the day from the birth of Yitzchak. Wow. And we lift up the cup, and this is my favorite part of the Pesach Seder. We lift up the cup, we say, V'hi sha'amda lavaseinu v'lanu, that this has stood for us in all generations. Shelo echad bavad amar aleinu l'chaloseinu, el shebachol dor v'dor omdin aleinu l'chaloseinu. They're sitting and they're waiting to destroy us. They're crouching and they're looking to jump upon us and to destroy us, to drop something on us, to see if they can wipe us out. V'kodesh baruch hu matzileinu miyadam. We're protected. Kodesh Baruch Hu is passing over the destructive wave of destruction that affected every other culture and every other civilization, is passing over their heads, passing over our heads, and is wiping out the others, And so we continue and we persist because we're protected by the bracha, because we're part of Kol Yisrael. We're part of the mission that started with Avram Avinu and ends with Mashiach. And therefore we attach ourselves to that event on Pesach night. That's what's happening. Manish Tana Halayla. Is there something about this night that we're sitting over here in the same night with Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Eliezer, and our ancestors that were sitting in Mitzrayim on this night? It's the same night. Right? Eating the same thing. Is there something special about this night? And that's the question. That's the question that drives and compels the whole evening. If we look and we see marvelous this night, and therefore on Pesach night, wow, there's so much to say. On Pesach night, I remember I started my Pesach Seder every year with the same story. I tell my kids the same story. I tell them, get ready, let's put on our seatbelts. We're about to give them a plane ride, I'm the pilot from the pilots, and I have my little 9-year-old son next to me. He's my co-pilot, and we're gonna take you now to Teretz Israel, and we'll be there in a few hours. We'll be showing a movie. We'll be discussing this, and we'll be having a meal at that time. In car pace, we'll go through Kadesh Urchatz Kar. We'll go through all the steps, and we'll tell them what the steps are in advance, just like they do on the airplane. And I always tell this story. story that there was an old Hasidic Rebbe that arrived in Eretz Israel. It was his first year in the land of Israel. He'd gone through the entire cycle, almost the whole year, and it was coming around Pesach time. And his Hasidim asked him, Rebbe, do you like being in Eretz Israel? The Rebbe liked being in Eretz Israel. Oh, he said, Eretz Israel is the dream of a lifetime. I think the Kalash Rebbe said it's not normal for a Jew not to long to be in the land of Israel. How about that? It's not normal. Since Lech Lecha, since Avram Avinu was that idea was installed into his heart, that commandment from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Lech Lecha El Haaretz Asher Erecha, it's not normal for a Jew not to long to be in the land of Israel. And that's why Rabbi Nachman said, wherever I'm going to Yerushalayim. Sometimes we're taking the circuitous route there, but we're on our way there, whichever path we happen to be taking. We're going to end up there. That's our destiny. And it says, and Namshin Rebbe says, now that I live in the land of Israel, the only thing I miss is the longing for the land of Israel. I always tell my wife, I know when we had a successful Pesach Seder, when the day after the kids are looking at the Israel pictures and say, oh, look what this one went, and I never went, and can I go, and when are we going? And my wife says, no, Label, when are we going? And I tell her, Ima, sometimes it's better that we want to go than we actually go. The longing to go. There is something that's happening over there. And therefore, when we lift up this cup on Pesach night, right? And we'll say in a second, this is what the Rebbe heard. He said, the culture is a little bit different. He says, but there is one word here I like very much. He says, what's that word? He says, Hakol Beseder. Everything is Beseder. And of course, when the Israeli fell in the street means that, I don't know if they use it that much anymore. It means, it's a dismissive term, like, Liz, mind your own business, basically. Back off, Jack. That's what it means. But when the Rebbe heard it with his innocent and pure ears around Pesach time, he understood Hakol Beseder. Everything is in order. Kodesh Baruch Hu had orchestrated everything. That every exile has a conclusion and has a good reason and it has a good purpose for it. And we got to stay around to the end of the movie. Stay around to the end, to the Afikomen that's going to come, the big prize that comes at the end of history. We break the bigger part and we put it away and we say, stay around, children, to the end of the movie. And also it means Hakol Beseder, that everything is in the Seder night. We have that beautiful mirror over there, and the Haggadah is like a mirror, and you're looking into the past, and you think you're looking into something we're looking into the past, but it's really a mirror. And if a person looks into the mirror, sometimes you can just look and get caught up with yourself. And and the eye, Rabbi Label says, is like the eye of a Jew. The neshama is like an eye. And if it feels safe, if it's in a clean, pristine environment, it can open up and see it a lot, right? But if it's not in a safe environment, if it's in a chumazdik environment, so a little splash, a little something, a little dot of something can cause the eye to close up. If a person looks into the mirror and all they see myopically is themselves, then all they see is themselves. But if a person can look beyond the images in the mirror, they can look beyond themselves, and they can see deeper into the mirror. The deeper we're going to look into the mirror, then actually we're looking at events that are happening farther into the future. And therefore, when we pick up that cup on Friday, on Pesach night, which will be on a Friday night, and we say, B'hisham Lavoseno, that this is stood for us, then that blessing that was given and that promise that was given to Avram Avinu climbs up through the veins of this tree of history, and it washes over us from the past, it catches up to the present, and we say, Lashana Haba Yerushalayim, next year in Yerushalayim. And we take one giant step forward. It pushes us towards destiny, towards where we're heading. There's 6 million Jews in the land of Israel now. How about that? It's a stunning number, right? And we have a threat, the Omdin Aleinu Lachalosenu, and we have threats that are standing over us to destroy us. The stake couldn't be higher, and the stage couldn't be bigger, and we couldn't be in a more dangerous and precarious place, and yet a more promising place. The baby's head is down. Kol mavaser va'omer. Kol mavaser va'omer. But we have all the Jewish people sitting together in different stations without a centralized authority, sitting together in the same original position they were 325 years ago, reading and attaching themselves to that promise of the past, wherever we happen to be, wherever those branches happen to be reaching, and taking that giant step forward and feeling that wave and experiencing that wave. If a person happens to catch it and they open up their eye, then they watch that wave of history and that promise that was given to Avram Avinu by the Bris Ben Absarim. It washes over us and we are included. That's why if a person eats chametz on Pesach, their eye closes up. And they can't see this. If a person is in the right environment and the eye opens up in a chametz-free environment, they can catch this overview of history and we can feel ourselves a part of it. That's why the Maharal explains that there's no punishment. It's punishment for kares, for eating matzah. It's a cause and effect. Like the doctor says, if someone who's diabetic, if you'll eat sugar, then it could lead chas v'shalom to an amputation. Chas v'shalom, if it could lead to, don't do it. The doctor's not causing that the person should have a diabetic reaction. He's warning, don't eat this because this is what could could possibly happen. And therefore, if the plane is taking off at a certain time and you're coming with metal through security, you don't get onto the plane. You didn't get onto the plane because you didn't pass through security. You didn't have the right things on you. You weren't dressed up appropriately, right? So therefore, it's a caution. Don't eat chametz on Pesach because it causes karas. And the Chedush HaRim says the opposite. You can tell the implication from a punishment. What Midah Tov Meruba 500 times, what would be the opposite of karas, of being cut off? What would be an opposite, the antonym of being cut off? What would you say? Let's give me a good word. What? Or to be attached, right? If something is cut off, then it's broken. When something is to be 500 times more attached, the person eats matzah on Pesach night, right? And the person avoids chametz on Pesach night. We get attached to the promise of Avraham Avinu. We become grafted onto the tree to be a part of the promise that comes into the future. That's the way it works. That's the dynamic on Pesach night. If somebody's eye opens up and we look at Hakol B'Seder, I see the whole past. I see everything's in the Seder. The whole past and the whole future is on Pesach night. Such a critical night, such a very, very important night. Now, we asked earlier, we said, don't leave the room until we answer the question. What was the question?
The matzah.
Why was Lot serving matzahs 401 years, right, before the Yetzias Mitzrayim? And yet at the Pesach Seder we say, because we didn't have enough time for the matzah to bake, and that's why we're eating matzahs on Pesach night. That's what we declare at the Pesach Seder, yeah? So let me share with you a piece of history over here that some of you will remember, and some of you might be too young to remember as I'm looking around the room, okay? I'm not going to say who's who. You'll identify yourself, but maybe some people remember the Gulf War Rishon, the first Gulf War, okay? So there was this, we mentioned his name before, Yamach Shemos Saddam Hussein, right? He went and he invaded a bordering country. America came to fight against, and they were pounding and pounding and pounding, and every day he got up like a New York City cockroach, and said, no. You didn't damage me. You couldn't get me, And no matter how much firepower, no matter how much armament was landing on him, and how many buildings went up in flames, he looked like he was indestructible, like Rasputin, like the Tsar's, advisor there. They just looked like, wow, what's it going to take to knock this guy out? Meanwhile, he starts throwing 39 Scud missiles into Eretz Yisrael, which is a very scary business. I remember my heart was turning. Everybody's heart was in their stomach. I have friends over there, even if you have friends over there, Chaverim, Achenu Kol Bnei Yisrael, we're all brothers. What's going to be? What's going to be? What's going to be? And they distributed, that everybody should be able to set up their houses, that Cheder Chatum, they should have a sealed room, yeah? And they gave gas masks to everybody. People came to Reb Chaim Kanievsky and they asked the following question: Rebbe, the gas masks that they gave, in order for them to be to work, they have to fit onto a snug, clean-shaven face, right? He said, so what do we do with our beards? Reb Chaim Kanievsky is not sitting on Ocean Parkway. He's sitting where the rockets red glare, right in the line of fire, because most of the Scud missiles, and they were presumed to have gas in them, were aiming for a few isolated pipelines, gas pipelines that would cripple the economy of Israel in Tel Aviv. That's where they were aiming at. And therefore, a few of them had landed in Bnei Brak, and some people got hurt, but nobody got killed except one guy, they said, that was driving his motorcycle on Shabbos through Bnei Brak and was raising pork on whatever it was. One guy who was a Machal Shabbos Hesia. And the 40th one landed in Lebanon in an American army base and killed 200 and some odd people. So these were not innocent and innocuous things, these Scud missiles. They didn't have the gas in them that people presume. So they came to Reb Chaim Kanievsky and said, Rebbe, do we shave off our beards, in order that the gas masks should fit snugly? And he gave a very surprising answer. Because here we have a mitzvah of pikuach nefesh, saving a life. Saving a life, right? Is pikuach nefesh is doicha kol Shabbos kol Torah kol, pushes every other mitzvah, Shabbos, everything, you name it, right? Someone drops, someone has a pain, someone goes into labor, don't hesitate. We go right into action. We do what we have to do. Pick up the phone. I saw my Rebbe one time pick up the phone and go right into action on Shabbos. That's what you have to do. People receive Bal Tefillah and a Bal Korah right out from underneath the talis when he's got his Hatzalah alarm goes off, and he's got to go run and do what he's got to do. And why? Because saving a life is preeminent. So they ask him, here we have saving a life, right? Versus what? Versus having a beard. That's not a mitzvah, not the biggest mitzvah in the whole universe. It's a custom to have a beard, right? How a man shaves his beard, makes a huge difference, because it shouldn't be with a straight razor. But Rav Moshe Sher, who had up Agud Yisrael for 50 years, didn't have a beard. In a mustache, you can get in the next world without a beard, right? I heard the Ramchal didn't have a beard. That's what I read someplace, right? Rabbi Yochanan, the Gemara described, didn't have a beard. Maybe he couldn't grow one, maybe whatever. He didn't have a beard. Right? Women don't have beards, right? You can get into the next word without a beard, right? So they ask him, what do we do with our beards? So it should be the easy answer, you take off your beard, so you have to be able to put on your gas mask. And he gave the same cavalier answer to everybody as he was sitting on his porch learning Gemara. He said, on Purim, you'll wear your masks. And we said before, they pounding this guy, and it looked like nothing was going to budge him, nothing was going to make a move. And then suddenly 4 days before Purim, right? Ba-ba-ba-bum, ba-bum. You got a bunch of American guys that were playing basketball in the Bronx like 6 months earlier, and now they're crawling on their elbows in the desert, in southern Iraq, with equipment, with 100 pounds of equipment on their back, sweating, profusely. And suddenly, after 4 days of this ground war, I don't even know why it happened, but suddenly he says, "Uncle, I give up." Desert storm, and suddenly he gave up. He gave up the ship. When did he quit? And when did they announce the armistice that was over? It was on Tainus Esther. And everybody was able to give them the signal, you can dismantle your Cheder Khatum. The children didn't go to school for months, because they had right there in their buildings, in the bomb shelters, they didn't have a chance to go out and to buy their Mordechai and Esther costumes. And I heard this answer coming back from many, many people went to ask him. He says, on Purim, you'll wear your masks. That night, everybody went out into the streets, and they heard the Megillah, and they were dancing in the streets. Guess what was the most popular costume that people were wearing dancing in the streets? And the answer is the gas masks. They were wearing the gas masks. Now you can imagine, the Chaim Kanievsky, the biggest Talmud scholar on the planet, gave such an answer like that. You can imagine it didn't happen, but let's say they would make a holiday, a Yom Tov, because we were saved and the war ended on this day, and everybody was dancing their gas masks to commemorate next year and every year for the next, 10 to 2,000, 3,000 years. We're all going to wear masks on this night. We're going to go out, we're going to put on our gas masks, and we're going to go out in the streets, and we're going to dance. And some historian, some fella in Hebrew University is going to say, isn't there a Jewish holiday called Purim that falls out on this exact same night? And that Jews are wearing masks for the last 2,400 years on Purim? Isn't that interesting? Isn't that a fascinating fact over there? That we've been wearing masks for the last 2,400 years on Purim and celebrating the Hester Punim, the hidden face of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and our own hidden face, and our hidden from our potential, whatever the hidden face on Purim happens to mean, and it happens to fall out that on that night, a mask should be, the gas mask should have significance. Turns out the gas masks were totally ineffectual. They weren't going to work anyway. And more people got hurt wearing them and trying them on. It turned out that they were not effective. They would not have worked. Okay, that's a sidebar. That's a sidebar. But can you imagine that somebody comes up with such a holiday like that, and these fellows say, we've been keeping it for 2,400 years, Purim, and we have a mask. Now, what does it have to do with Purim? Now we make a segue to Pesach. Right? That means there's something about the day Purim that has something to do with Hashem's hidden face. That's the day. That's what's happening. It's part of the ingredients of that day. And the same thing, Pesach Lot went out from Sodom that day, right? His wife looked back. She went back into the dustbin of history. She removed herself from the cloud, so she didn't go forward. But he had two daughters that came along with him. They had two countries, Ammon and Moab. They came out, the two daughters turned into two nations. And later on, 700 and some odd years later, one Naamas and Rus should come out. From Rus should produce Moab, and Naamas should marry into Shlomo Melech, and that should produce the Davidic dynasty that's going to move into the future. How about that? So he contributed something to the future. Something was exuded. Something was taken out that night, and it could have been lost in history, but he managed to escape. So there's something on Pesach night. Manish Tana Halayla, there's something about this night that chametz is a reality on this night, and that matzah is a reality. That Lot served matzah. It just so happens that Kadosh Baruch Hu dovetailed history and made it that should work out that when Klal Yisrael went out that next morning, that it was hot and they went out in a hurry, and that the dough baked, and it happened to coincide. You see, here we have the reoccurrence of matzah on this night. We sit here 3,325 years later, after family keeping year after year after year, generation after generation after generation, on this night eating matzahs. Right? How about that? Right? Look at the possibility. Can you imagine an older and more secure institution, right, than Jewish people sitting and eating matzah on Pesach night? And we can ask ourselves, Manish Tana Halayla, is there something about this night? right? Is there something about this night, right? And just the asking of that question and the depth of the way that we ask this question, appreciate, is there something about this particular night? You can't move it to any other night. And are we going to be doing anything other on this night than eating matzah and not eating chametz and eating maror and not eating, other things that we're forbidden to eat? And the answer is, of course not. We're going to be eating those things. And therefore, it begs the question, is there something about this night? And there's a promise that's in this night. Just like Klal Yisrael got out 3,325 years ago, and we were covered over and we were sealed with the promise that was given to Avraham Avinu. So that promise and that potentiality exists this Pesach night also. Not that we're just sitting there as individuals, we're sitting there with all of Klal Yisrael, not just all of Klal Yisrael of the 14 million Jews that are on the planet today, but all the Jews from history we're attaching ourselves. We're part of Kol Yisrael. That's what it means to be part of Kol Yisrael. The Jews of the past and the Jews of the future and the Jews of the present. That's what we want our children. That's what we want to be attached to, Bez Hashem. That's why we can't afford to lose one person. If any little piece of it should fall away, any part of a person should fall away for the Pesach Seder on Pesach night, then chas v'shalom, if you missed the plane by a minute, then you missed it by a mile. We want to be on the plane. We want to make sure that we're on the plane. There was one crazy American comedian who said that 90% of success is showing up. The fact that people just showed up already, is already partial success. But then we can get really attached by getting into with joy of eating the matzahs and times. I wish everybody Chag Kosher v'Sameach, and that Lashon Haba Yerushalayim next year we should be one giant step closer to Hashem.